Welcome to the DevReady Podcast. Today I've joined by Neville Christie. The DevReady Podcast is all about helping non-techs build better tech, but today we're doing something a little bit different. We will align into that a little bit, but also just exploring what the impacts of what's going on in the world are happening right now, and taking you through what Neville's thoughts are on that. Neville is founder of Fast Track Assets, and he would consider himself as a comprehensive future maker. So, Neville, thanks for joining us.
Yes. Oh, wonderful, Andrew. And what a fantastic time to be talking about the future.
Yeah, definitely. In this upheaval that we're all going through and this massive
Yes.
change, yes, it is a good time.
I have to say, although I did not, or my team did not specifically forecast or predict the coronavirus, for the last 2 years, we've been arguing very strongly that this decade would see what we've called 40 tsunamis, really changing the total face of our globe and our business. And we said that a particular event would spark off the other events, and global warming is sort of the underlying base. And we saw the fires and the floods and the typhoons at Christmas. But now the pandemic, I think, has started a whole series of changes that will ripple on for the whole decade.
Yeah, it seems like we're in some uncharted water right now.
Yes, we're now into unknown and abnormal is now the normal, Andrew.
Yeah, definitely. So just Neville, before we jump in and explore your thoughts on what's going on in the world today and what the future might look like, tell us a little bit about who Neville is, your background, your history. How did you first start your entrepreneurial journey? Because you've been involved in, from what I've read and spoken about, 44 ventures, 41 successful, which is pretty rare in this world. So tell us a little bit about who Neville is.
Well, I guess I see I'm a man of many parts. The entrepreneurial journey, which I guess is what you're partly interested in, really started at about 6. I was born during the Second World War in 1941, so that I didn't have many peers of my own age group, so that, if you like, my peers or my cohorts were either a lot older or a lot younger than I was.
Okay.
So at 6, when I first started going to school, which was at the end of the Second World War, for some strange reason, I started to gravitate towards making money in all sorts of forms. I think partly because there was so much shortage, money was short, resources were short at the end of the Second World War.
Yes.
So I just naturally gravitated to a whole series of things like, the typical putting up lemonade stands, running concerts and events. But in those early years, it was mainly raising money for the Blind Institute.
What drew you to the Blind Institute in that time?
I don't know, but it's fascinating how sometimes things that occur in your very early age come back in your later age, because I'm now 78 and I'm actually literally facing going blind myself.
Oh, wow.
And, I'm having wondrous injections into my eyes every 4 to 6 weeks, which has slowed the process down. But, almost like that early interest was prophetic. But I honestly don't know.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? Some things we get drawn to, and sometimes there's no reason behind it, and hopefully everything's okay from the eye front. But that doesn't sound like a pleasant scenario to be having injections into your eye. I don't imagine.
Well, I think I feel full of gratitude that technology has moved on in the medical field that's prevented, and in fact. Wet macular degeneration is the single biggest cause of blindness worldwide. So, that's terrific. But you're asking about how did my journey start? That was the first one, but the most important part of my entrepreneurial journey started at 12 when my father, I came from a working class background.
Yes.
And I guess I was slightly different. Partly, I think, somehow, for some strange reason, I was reasonably intelligent. And at 12, my father went totally belly up, emotionally, physically, economically. And by default, I became, even though I was the second son, I became the breadwinner, confidant of my mother, the leader of the family.
At 12.
And
Yeah, well, that's significant responsibility put on a 12-year-old.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But again, it was sort of like nothing I planned. It just sort of, I just sort of evolved or gravitated into it out of circumstance.
Yeah, so the circumstances drew you to that. So sometimes life happens for us, and
Sometimes life happens to us.
Yes, exactly. Correct. So at 12, what did you? So you actually you become the breadwinner. What did that mean?
Well, it meant, of course, that I started seriously entrepreneuring, and at age 12, I started 3 micro businesses while still full time at school.
Okay.
The first one, strangely, was diving down at Site 10 Rosebud, where we went at Christmas for scallops.
Nice.
And those I cooked and sold around the campsites at Rosebud. And out of that, I saw there were lots of beer bottles, and I collected those on the way back and made a reasonable amount of money out of those. But the real money earner was that I collected all the shells, and when I went home, I'd clean them and turn them into ashtrays.
Ashtrays, nice. Yeah, cool.
A lot of smokers at the time.
Yes, I imagine back in those days.
What I did was get some plaster of Paris, set the shell as a 2 parts. The bottom part, which was round, into the plaster of Paris. Sorry.
Yes.
And then the straight bit setting up. Lots of other shells round. Painted it all up. Lacquered it. Put free felt on the bottom. Total.
Wow.
Resource price was about 5 cents, and I sold those door to door. Help this poor boy through school and support his family for the equivalent of 75 cents. So,
that's extreme profit margin there.
That's pretty good, yeah. That led on to my 4th business, because I was generating a lot of money out of that. I started selling papers at Sarah Koski's pub, and some of the guys would say, "Look, I'm a bit short this week. Could I have the paper and you pay me? I'll pay you on payday." And I kept that a record. And then a few of them started saying, "Listen, son, you might not be able to do this, but I'm really short this week. Do you think you could loan me a few bob and I'll pay you on payday?"
Oh, wow. So, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. How old are you? Still 12 or getting a bit older?
13.
13. All right. So 13 in your 4th business and becoming a loan shark. I like it.
Well, yeah, yes. Well, it's just something that evolved from being in the right place at the right time. So, some guys, no one ever not paid. Everybody paid me on Thursday at payday.
Yep.
Some, they'd loan 10 bob at the time, 10 shillings.
Yes.
And they give me 10 shillings back, like another 10 shillings.
Oh, on top of. So you made...
Yeah, on top of. So I realized money could make money. And
that's a good learning at 13. I think many people get exposed to that into the later ages. 13, so, yeah.
By 13, I was earning 4 to 5 times what was the basic wage then.
Oh, wow.
Still at school and, totally able to support myself and my family.
Yeah, that's brilliant backstory in terms of how you started this journey, fell into it, and but it's massively resourceful in terms of what you were doing, looking for opportunity anywhere and everywhere. And I commend you for just doing that.
Everywhere, except most of us have our eyes closed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And in times like today, people can have their eyes closed, but there are people out there looking for the opportunity and making the most of not a great scenario for most people. So. And in the same time, that wouldn't have been a great scenario for you. You could have put your head in the sand, but you chose to step up and do something about it. So, yeah, commend you for that.
Andrew, I actually think, I'm 78 now. I'm still active and vital as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So I've been in business, 66 years, seriously. I actually believe that this pandemic is causing such a huge degree of change globally in just about everything you can see, society, business, economics, culture, politics, that it's manifesting a huge new range of opportunities. And I'm flat out starting to work with others collaboratively to do something about these, changing opportunities.
Yeah,
I actually believe that the vast bulk of our businesses have suddenly become obsolete. And therefore, in the next year, we'll either have to sell or fold them. We will have to transform them in some way, or what I believe is that we should be collaborating with other entrepreneurs, other SMEs, to really create a quite different future based on the new realities that are emerging.
yeah, I think that's a good stance to be in right now. And collaborative is a pivotal word, and I'm seeing the same thing.
Yes.
Talking to other entrepreneurs, there are opportunities. We work heavily in the pharmaceutical space and pharmacy space, so there is a lot going on in that world. If you're willing to look and willing to help, I think there's plenty out there. And there is more opportunity when things are a little bit up in the air and people aren't quite certain. I think there's a lot more opportunity in a market like that. When everything's going up, it's easy to jump on and make money. But if you can actually produce an outcome in this current climate, you'll see it through to the end of it and into the next 5-10 years as well. So definitely keep looking, guys, out there. And collaborative is pivotal, and I learned that later in life, not that early as probably you did.
Well, it's just interesting on that because Louis Pasteur, the great chemist, I suppose he was, he said chance favours the prepared mind.
Yes.
And I honestly believe that the greatest opportunities come out of the greatest crises, the greatest dangers, the greatest threats, the greatest problems. And there are so many occurring now at every way. I mean, just take one for example, the way that we have been forced back to our homes. So that means we're starting to integrate with our spouses and our kids in a much more vital way.
Yes.
But also we're working from home, and that means that all of us are suddenly having to use different forms of technology. I was talking with someone who, I won't name the bank, but one of the major banks, and they realised that that in fact, with about 2/3 of their whole resources and staff now working from home, their productivity has gone up.
Interesting.
and they are seriously looking at moving, 2/3 of their team to work full time from home and provide them with the new technologies, the new support. That's life changing.
It is, and the ripple effect on the economy and business as we know it. Just think of the actual landlords that are owning all these buildings, and businesses starting to realise maybe I don't need this office space anymore.
Well, you imagine if suddenly, I mean, just take it. We're walking along Collins Street and Elizabeth Street at the moment because I live in the city. Like 70 to 80% of all the shops are closed. What if they close permanently? And look at all those high-rise buildings.
Yes.
Let's say 50% of them are emptied of staff. Think of the ripple-on effect of that.
Yeah, there's a massive ripple-on effect for everything. Especially then, there's no epicenter, there's no city anymore, and that pretty much removes all your traffic congestion. People aren't traveling. You can see the roads now, they're completely empty. And we solve many different problems if a lot more people are at their place of work, is their home. It's
a lot of people, I believe, like me. I mean, I'm schizophrenic. I live 1 foot in the city and 1 foot at Wood End, which is
complete opposites, polar opposites. Yes.
I'll accept I'm schizophrenic. I love living in quite different worlds.
Yes.
So, and I mean, that's stimulating in itself. And I believe that more people will flee to the country and to the regional areas.
And I think if people are given that opportunity, a lot of people drawn to nature. And I think as humans, we are drawn to more nature, open space. Living in a box is not something that most of us enjoy. And I think, that's why we like to get out of our homes, because being confined to one space is not what as we are. We like to move. We like to gravitate to different people, to socialise. So it'll be very interesting to see how it all goes.
Just think of that, for example. the changes that Ripple run. So
Yes.
we're all getting used to working from home.
Mm.
We're starting to all gravitate towards quite different technologies,
Yes.
Zoho and Zoom
Mm-hmm.
and the Microsoft suite. You and I are recording this not face to face, but by technology.
Yes.
So everybody gets used to that, and then
Mm-hmm.
they think, well, I think I want to go and live in Ballarat or Bendigo or that tiny little town which has got internet access.
Mm-hmm.
They can still work there. They can still work from home, and now they're part of an extended community.
Yes.
They can then consider, growing a few vegetables, and that ripple effect is going to be enormous, because I think the biggest single thing that has happened with the pandemic is that on January the 1st, our driving force was sort of, ourselves and independence and, solo entrepreneuring. Suddenly, the driving force is community, is collaboration, is assisting each other, is being part of a bigger force.
Mm.
That mental change is absolutely world changing.
And I think it's probably something that the world possibly needed.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think
so things like I think we said before.
Oh, I'm sure so. It's a big pandemic, but we've got it.
Yeah.
And it is a great force for change.
Yeah, definitely. And when people get thrown into the deep end, as you would say, we look to how we can connect. And I think good comes in bad times. So people look to how we can help. There's obviously your minorities where if they get too hit, then it becomes more problematic. So governments are keeping people prodded up right now, which is a good thing. But the ripple effect on that is another story.
I mean, your first point, I think, is right, that in good there's always bad, and in bad there's always good.
Correct.
It depends on your mental attitude and how you work that through. But look at the fact of how the Liberal government, with a whole set of free market principles and, non-intervention in business and so on, keeping the dole payment as low as possible, a whole set of prescriptives, they've thrown them all out of the water.
They have.
It's amazing.
Yes.
I mean, good luck to them. Thank God for them. But what a sea change in thinking.
It is a sea change. It's like at the moment of crisis, we have to do something different, and we're
in the middle of Third World War, World War III, aren't we? I was born in World War II. This is World War III. If you think about it, because this one is impacting every country, every citizen.
And it's just, you look online, there's people all over the world locked away in their homes. I've got clients in Singapore, they're locked away, and you just think everybody's in the same position. I think it's bringing people together because we're all impacted in the same way. And I think you have that connection, you have that understanding. Everyone's, like you said, working from home, connected on the internet. I feel like I'm communicating potentially more now than I did when I was in my office doing face-to-face meetings and conversations. Because it's
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, already this week, I've had a global board meeting on the internet, and we were connected in America, in England, in Thailand, in Brisbane, in Melbourne, in Hong Kong, and in China.
Yes.
And, it was relatively seamless. Last night, I had 3 major teleconferencing around the world. So literally now the world opens up to us in a different way than it has in the past.
Because we've got no choice. And then we can, yes, there's no choice, so we need to take it. But then we can, I think we look.
Prepared mind, and what is it? Necessity is the mother and father of inventions.
Very, very good. So let's get back. Let's talk a little bit about, is this from a global market reset? So coming into 2020, and you've been writing about this on your posts, that we were going into obviously large debts, we had interest rates being cut. Is this the market reset that we were eventually going to have anyway, and just brought on by, you believe, the virus itself has brought this on, where the market's been hit 30% down, give or take? Is this what you perceive would have happened anyway if we weren't hit by a virus?
Fantastic question, Andrew. Look, fundamentally, escalating debt, global debt, national debt, corporate debt, personal debt, is the single biggest threat to capitalism as we have, because all of that debt, the printing of the money, stimulates really not the real economy, except for the consumer economy.
Yes.
Which is part of the real economy. But fundamentally, where it flows into is to keep the banks propped up. And also it goes into the money economy. It goes into non-productive assets. It goes into property like homes. So these increase the apparent wealth of people. It's not GDP growth in the sense of it's not new innovation. It's not new things. Do you understand the difference? Like, there's a big difference between the money economy and the real economy.
Yeah, no, I get that logic. So you're saying basically money's getting printed. We're investing in maybe more asset-driven land. Prices keep going up. We get inflation from that perspective.
Shares.
Yes, shares go up. Yep.
But we haven't seen in 5 years an increase in wages, for example.
Yeah, and that's heavily hitting everybody. So you've got property prices going up, share markets going up, and how do we afford to keep living in a society as it is if wages don't increase?
Correct. And GDP globally around the world is tanking. It's going down significantly and has been. So for the last 2 years, we've been saying that this money backed only by a government IOU and with no real assets or anything other than a promise to pay, that is becoming more and more a crisis. And of course now the pandemic has increased the money supply, increased the printing, increased the involvement of government.
Yes, we just keep doing the same thing again, don't we?
We're getting closer and closer and closer to the edge. It's just not sustainable. Now, I think there's 4 scenarios that are possible. The first is that miraculously, some way, all the basic rules of economics will change. What the banks are doing, the printing of the money will eventually work, asset prices will remain high, and the economy will get back to being stimulated and growing, but in different ways. I think that's vaguely possible, but pretty unlikely.
Okay.
The second scenario is that we will see, as we're seeing with the virus, far more government intervention, far more direct involvement in stimulating the economy or underwriting the economy. We've seen that with the coronavirus, and I think that we're going to see more of that sort of intervention. But again, of course, that just adds to the money supply. The third scenario is the one that we've seen in the past, that the powers that be start a war of some sort, a physical war, a currency war, a trade war. And again, I think that's part of the mix. But the one that seems inevitable to me, is a global economic reset where the G20 countries and the central banks get together and do a total rewrite of currencies, debt, and economic systems. I think that's the most likely. I'm predicting possibly before the end of this year, but fairly certainly soon after the re-election of Donald Trump.
And what do you think that means, especially to like the US dollar? Could we see more alignment back to gold? Obviously, in the 70s, we had the underpinning of US dollar taken away from gold. That's obviously just increased inflation. And do you believe that the US dollar is sustainable in the current climate, especially long term? Obviously, no dollar in the history has ever survived. You go back to the sterling, throughout the journeys, none of us survived, and it generally flows into the economy that produces the most. And currently, China is the economy that produces everything. Is there potential that we go down to something that's backed more from there, or gold? What do you think could be the long-term output of what's going on?
Oh, look, a wonderful question. And quite frankly, I think it's not quite as important what I think, but what we all start to think about and do, because One of the wonderful things about human beings is when we identify a possibility or a threat or an opportunity,
Yes.
that very identification or discussion about it leads to a change. So, if I say,
interesting. Yeah, okay.
I say, for example, that, and I'm not saying this,
Uh-huh.
that a new physical atomic bomb-based third world war is going to happen.
Uh-huh.
If I said that,
Yes.
then a whole series of things would start to happen to make sure that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things that I see are possibilities is that, yes, as you've hinted at, just as the Bretton Woods Agreement, Tricky Dicky Nixon wanted to move a brilliant piece of national engineering, by the way, to move the world off the gold standard onto the US dollar as the fiat currency of the world, in which most global trading is linked.
Yes, correct.
And as you've suggested, that really has led to the dominance, the economic, political, and social dominance, cultural dominance of the United States.
It has.
But truly, the real power in the world and for the future now is communist China.
Yes.
They have managed their currency the best. It's been stable. They've moved to acquire massive amounts of gold.
They have been investing heavily in gold.
Yes. They've started gold mines. They're buying gold mines. They've enabled their citizens to actually buy gold through the banks. They've got a digital one now, a digital currency, digital online. They're starting to trade around the world in baskets of currencies rather than the US. And they're using all of the huge amount of dollars that they bought to keep their one in parity with the US dollar. They're using all of that to buy up significant assets around the world and, of course, increase their defensive and military presence. So the answer is, I think that all of this will see an inward-looking US, becoming more protectionist of its own economy. And, it can actually, or used to before the China dominance, it used to be able to produce 96% of its GDP. And I don't know what the percentage is now, but they will go back to doing that. All of us will become more resilient. We'll start to realize that we're very vulnerable with our, just-in-time manufacturing and our sending off so many industries to China. I believe
everything keeps going out to China, and I think there's some learning here. Clearly, when you can't produce anything, and you're in a crisis as we are today, and the getting stock in,
change.
There's change coming.
Chip's been heading in one direction, and right now it's going to head back 180 degrees.
I think that's a good thing. If you can build some reliance and start, we have to, and that all goes into the wage conversation and the cost of wages in Australia and in the US and why everything's gone to China, and that's a big conversation. But that's reality. It's just really the cost, and that's an implication of what's going on with the printing of the money and the rising inflation and assets, and it all bubbles into that problem that we're creating ourselves, really.
Yes, and what has happened as a part of that is, if you look at the numbers, a very, very small percent of the population, well under the global population, well under 1%, controls or owns a huge amount of the wealth. I don't know the actual percentage, but let me be out on a limb and say 80%. It's probably not that high, but it's a massive amount. Is focused in the hands of a tiny few.
Yeah, correct.
And of course, the working class, the labouring people who use their hands to create wealth and create income, they've been squeezed. And the middle class, except in China, has been declining rapidly.
It has.
So all of that has to change.
In terms of the current situation, you mentioned earlier in this conversation that life may never be the same again. Industries may never be the same again. We may have businesses that may disappear. A new business model may exist. So we're looking at hospitality, tourism, travel. The aviation industries are all being massively impacted by this. Banking and finance is starting to be impacted as well. So how do you see those industries and beyond 2020? What do you believe about hospitality, tourism, especially the aviation industries?
Well, generally, let's say that I see a move increasingly back towards go back a bit to the analogy of the mainframe computer where everything was centralized, say in America or China or Australia,
Yes.
and everything else was, left to everybody else. Bring that back to the notion of the network computers, so that, things are now multi-focused and multi-regional and multi-individual. That's one massive trend that is going to occur and is occurring. Like, the virus's pandemic has started that.
Yes.
So we'll move to much more reliance. And Australia, for example, will create at least 20 new industries. And I'm working on a number of those. I'm predicting that,
20 new industries. That's quite a number.
Well, let's just name two of the 20.
Yes.
First of all, we know that part of the global warming problem and the economic problem for Australia is that we are fixated on coal.
Yes, we are.
I can't remember the exact number, but I think we support the coal and gas industry to the tune of about $20 billion a year. It's in that order of magnitude.
Okay.
Hydrogen is a workable alternative, but it needs investment, and the Australian government is doing that investment. And there's a report that a government body, delivered to the Commonwealth Group of Nations, and you can get it online, fascinating, that basically says that hydrogen is a feasible new industry for Australia, and it's capable of being many billions of dollars in export.
Okay.
So hydrogen will be a future.
Yeah, replacing other industries. So you will bring in new industries and potentially replace others that are not so great in the environment. So that makes sense. In terms of creating just industry after industry, I think some will definitely get replaced.
Another one is industrial hemp. Now,
and I know you're doing a little bit in this space. So tell me a bit about industrial hemp.
Look, it's a miracle crop. It was killed off by the Monsantos and chemical companies of the world because it's too good a crop. It doesn't require any fertilizer. It doesn't require any great money investment. And it's very different from medical marijuana or smoking marijuana.
Yes.
It actually has a growing cycle of 16 weeks.
Okay.
It can grow on almost any sort of land. It doesn't need fertilizer. And it has approximately 3,000 different uses. One of the major uses is that fundamentally any area in a building that currently uses timber can use industrial hemp.
So replacing timber.
Yeah. Now just think of that. If we now no longer need to cut down our trees.
And it only takes 16 weeks growing cycle. Interesting.
Right. Doesn't that make a massive change to, our globe?
Yeah, it will make a massive change in terms of the environment itself. So powerful stuff, something I think I probably need to do some more investigation on based on that comment.
Yes, and have a look at advanced growth industries that the Australian government is seeing as major opportunities for us to invest in, and also look at the 17 development goals of the United Nations.
Yeah, they're pretty heavily driven by quite a few organisations now.
Yes, and like there's massive opportunities in there, and it will happen. The big issue is that none of this happens by itself. Like the coronavirus pandemic has been a series of atomic bombs thrown into each country. There's devastation, there's mess, there's change, there's mayhem. The better future isn't going to happen by itself. It's going to be happen by, I believe, a really important part is existing SMEs binding together in cohorts of 10 and purposely working, first of all, to future-proof their business and their life, making the transformation they need to get the base of their business back again, but then more importantly, innovating collaboratively to create far better futures. And that's the way ahead that I see that's important, and that's what I've dedicated my life to.
No, very, very interesting to see your perspective on that. So purposely working towards anything, we can change any industry, any culture, and if we collaborate together, there's more power in that. Trying to do things on your own is a lot more difficult than bringing some great minds together and actually delivering from all different facets with the right people in the right seats.
I think this is the fundamental theme that's changing. One of the things I have picked up in my brief sojourn on this planet is that just about in every area of life, business, society, family, culture, politics, there's a continuous continuum between the needs and interests of me, the needs and interests of we, a selected group, and the needs of interest of them, the broader society, the broader community. And if you look at it, every system is balancing the I, the us, and the them. And what I'm seeing now is that the pandemic has kicked off a huge move to the us and them, that community, cooperation, collaboration, working together, pulling together, because we're at war.
Interesting.
Has been a massive shift away from the narrow I and us.
Which is positive for everybody.
I think so. I think the change is so massive that it's going to ripple this decade. And it will create huge opportunities for people who are prepared to be in business, not just to make money, but to be in business to create better futures for all, to add value to the world in different ways. That's where the future lies.
And I think there's a massive shift in business. We used to be advertised to buy product. The world is so connected now that everyone knows why people are in business. If you're trying to make a bigger impact than just a bottom line, you can communicate that out to the market. People can actually see the impact, can communicate that through their social channels. It's a very different world we live in, and we can create a bigger impact. And with impact, I can't recall who said this, but to make $1 billion, impact 1 billion people. I think it was Peter Diamandis, from what I recall. But basically, the more impact that you can have is obviously betterment of you, your business, your collaborative, than just trying to do it all for yourself. And I think that's more purpose-driven, which is what you alluded to begin with as well.
Yes, I just want to come back to something there because it's really, really important. And that is that for the last, let's say 25 years, but much longer than that, for the last 25 years in Australia, while we've had unmitigated, quarter by quarter growth, fundamentally the medium of exchange has mainly been money, dollars. We are going to see a whole lot of changes in the currency valuations, and as you said, maybe a move to gold, maybe a move to an international currency. Maybe the digital one becomes the international currency. Maybe a basket of currency. That is going to happen. But I believe far more important is the fact that as businesses and as citizens and as nations, we're going to have to start trading in value rather than money.
Back to barter.
Now, it's barter, but a lot of things in life are so invaluable that we don't put a value on them. I've become very conscious of the value of my eyes now that I'm, in danger of losing my eyesight. So
we don't know what we have until we start losing it or have lost it, basically.
Exactly. And you can go to some countries in the world, I won't name them for political reasons, but you can go to some countries in the world and you could sell one of your kidneys for a retail price of $200,000.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And some tourists go to these countries and wake up in their hotel in a bath of ice with one of their kidneys unwillingly removed. So the money value of a kidney is $200,000.
Yes.
And people who are on a dialysis machine feel that that's very good value.
I believe they would, yes. But as a healthy human being, you wouldn't.
That's right. Yes. Now, what is the value to us of our eyes, for example? And what is the value to us of our friends? What is the value to us of love? What is the value to us of our children? What's the value to us of the talent that we have, the masteries that we possess? What is the value of us to the new thinking? What is the value to us of the fact that we can purposely create a better future?
Yeah. Now, interesting. In a capital society, we generally would go to the fact of how do we put a monetary value on that, but you can't. There's nothing. I believe you can't, but yeah, personally. But
what I've done is I've created a new currency, and it's not legal tender. Okay. It's collaborative tender, and it's called high views, high intrinsic value units.
Okay.
So everything we do, we issue a number of high views. So, for example, if I were mentoring you,
yes,
I would charge you $10,000 for a mentoring program.
Okay.
I would issue you 100,000 high views, and we would say, okay, what new value do you want for your business and view? What new mastery? What new skills? How do you want it to create a new business model? What do you want? All right, yes. You want this, this, and this. Now let's allocate your 100,000 high views to those. Right? So this one you'll put 10,000 high views. This one you'll put 100,000, 100, whatever. You allocate them, and as we add the value, you pay back the high views. So.
Okay, so you deliver value first.
Yes, and it's all about delivering value. And if at the end of that, the added value process is not working, I buy back your high views at half the price you paid.
Okay, so interesting concept.
So what we're trying to do there is move our thinking from money as the only means of exchange. And of course, as you said, barter is a different form of exchange.
Definitely.
Digital currencies are a form of money, but if you think about them, they're a quite different form of money.
They are.
Yes, reputation is and skills and masteries are other currencies.
To me, as a business owner, having different skill sets coming into our business and creating value is definitely a form of currency. And
we don't recognise it. See, the interesting thing is under our current money system, we will say people are our greatest assets. Ha, ha, ha. Show me your balance sheet and show me
where the expenses lie.
As an asset. Take me to your profit and loss, and where do I find people listed as a cost?
Yeah, they are an expense. Yes, and the biggest expense for most businesses out there.
That's the perversion.
Get it.
What I mean? It's a perversion.
Yes.
So we're trading artificially in a currency, and we're ignoring a huge amount of the real underlying value. Then we print lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of this money, this paper stuff that's not backed by anything except the government promise. And we wonder why the world's going to pot.
And I think it's inevitable based on where we're headed and just thinking like this.
Until you and I change it by collaborating and working together, Andrew.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And
I mean, that's what you're doing with this website.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the purpose of what these podcasts for. It's to create value. Exactly what you said.
Sorry, but it's to create shared value.
Yes.
It's to create shared value in two ways.
Yes.
Like it's bringing people together to enunciate and think about and talk about and dialogue about a different way of being and acting and having in the world. But then it's sharing with a broader community. So it's a very important role you're playing, Andrew.
I appreciate that. And thank you for coming on board and playing your role because it is shared value. I can't do this on my own, clearly.
Of course not. Now that's the big message. Stop doing it alone and start collaborating.
Yeah, brilliant. There's so much to be said for that, and so much power in collaboration. So
Absolutely.
it's huge. Now let's take a bit of a change in tack here.
Sure.
So we talked about you mentioned a little bit about the 40 tsunamis, and there I think
Yeah.
that you've dived in a little bit on that around the change in the potential industries and different impacts, and it could be about what's happening with the dollar, etc., in terms of how we value things. So let's talk about who Peter Pronto is.
He's Dr. Peter Pronto, and he's my alter ego. Now, uh, I don't know whether you know what an alter ego is,
I
do you?
do know what an alter ego is, yes. But yeah, explain why
Have a
you
go at
created
explaining
Peter
it.
Pronto.
Pardon? Have a go at explaining it, because I get a bit lost when I try to explain it.
Yeah, I'll try to explain it. It's so alter means another ego. So we carry an ego, which is our standard form and mind and how we think. But sometimes we need to put on a different hat, and I think an alter ego is just putting on a different hat. And an example that might be, for me, as what I perceive it to be, is when I'm at work, I'm wearing a hat. When I'm at home, I'm wearing a different hat. But if you want to jump into a different form of thinking, and I think that's why you've created Peter Pronto, which is just another way of thinking and maybe letting go of that ego that basically we have. That's what I perceive an alter ego to be.
A very good definition. For me, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's prediction or a projection
Yes.
onto him of the better human being that I would like to aspire to and to become.
Brilliant. Yes.
And what we know from a whole lot of research, and particularly the work of, say, Carl Gustav Jung, is that internally we are not just one person. We have, maybe 3,000 different archetypes, certainly 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. The fewest I've ever found in working with anyone is 100.
Wow.
So we have 100 different archetypes, and we keep changing these, as you said, a bit like, you imagine a Christmas party,
Mm-hmm.
and we're a son, we're a husband or
Yes.
a partner,
Mm-hmm.
we're a brother, we're a parent, we're Father Christmas.
We're the guy that goes and gets a beer out of the fridge for everybody. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
like in that party, we're changing roles, or if you like, archetypes. We're different persona,
Yes.
and we handle that with great ease.
Yes.
And that's one of the massive new assets and resources that we have, that internally inside us, we have huge resources that we typically untap, and it's time that we did. And most people I ask them 3 questions. How old is your physical body? Not really, but how old do you see your physical body? Oh, 18, right?
Uh-huh.
How old are you actually? 78. How old are you inside? Oh, 24. And I find everybody I meet has different ages for those 3 things. And it's just an indication, a simple indication of how complicated we are. But equally what assets and resources are inside. And for that reason, I love the Indian Namaste, and it's got many interpretations, but the one I love best is, the God who is within me sees and acknowledges the God who is within you. I like that one.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very, very interesting. The God that is within me. Can you repeat that?
Yes, this is my reinterpretation of the Hindu language, which I don't speak.
Yes.
It's the God who lives within me.
Yes.
Sees and acknowledges the God who lives within you.
And I perceive that as a form of connection. That's how I would gather that, and how we are connected. Yeah.
Yes, we are connected at the highest level.
Yes, and even if we're not aware, we are.
Exactly. Yes. Beautiful, Andrew. Yes.
Now, in terms of
see, if we start to not see and acknowledge the Godhead in you, and you see and acknowledge the Godhead in me, and we realize that we've also got demons, and we've got human things as well, and animal stuff. and if we start working more on that quote divine,
Yes.
What a massive transformation occurs within us as humans, within us as a small group, and then in terms of how we can be, have, and do in the world.
From what I've learnt over my journey, is that is where flow is. That is where you stop. You take the barriers down, you push down the ego. If you're living in divine, you're having a conversation and a flow of conversation. You're not blocked by what you say, what you do. So it is quite powerful to live in that frame of state, and I consider it, and people talk about it, flow state, in terms of being in that conversational state, like we potentially could land into in a conversation like this.
Yes. There's an old saying that tickles my fancy, that if we talk to God, that's prayer. If God talks to us, that's paranoia. So
I love it.
What is it if the God in you talks with the God in me? What's that?
I can't explain that either.
Collaborative innovation, yes.
Yes, collaborative innovation. I like it. So, but one of your statements and sayings is the purpose of life is to create and manifest a life of purpose. Now, what would you say your purpose is? Now, you probably touched a bit upon this, but what would you say it is at this current stage of being 78? What is your purpose right now?
It changed when my son suicided 11 years ago, but it's now significantly, and it sounds a little bit I don't know what the word. A bit
sorry to hear about your son and suicide. That's terrible to hear.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Yeah,
but thanks. So 11 years ago, it became to create far better futures for all. One person, one idea, one joint venture, one nation, one innovation, one technology at a time.
I like it. So that is bringing that collaborative component together, and then looking at it at one step at a time, though, because we can't do everything all at once, and I think we can get a bit lost in trying to do everything. But one at a time.
We can't do everything alone.
Correct. Yes.
But the more we collaborate and form cohorts of 10 fellow SMEs, the more it's amazing how much we get done in the same time dimension.
10. Why do you perceive that as a number, and how do you collaborate at a number of 10 and not let ego get in the way? Would be one of the questions people are probably thinking right now.
Well, of course you let ego get in the way. Come on, we're animals as well as divine creatures.
True.
And people. So you acknowledge it. Look, 10's totally arbitrary.
Yeah, I get it.
But 10's a bit of it, and so is 40. We touched on before. 10 is totally arbitrary, but if you go back to the old question, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. Okay. What is the sound? What is the sound of one hand clapping?
There is no sound of one hand clapping, but
that's right. There's no sound.
Correct.
What is the sound of two hands clapping?
A clap.
Yes.
Yes.
And two hands, put them together. What do you have? How many fingers? 10.
10.
So there's two reasons why I use 10. The first is that it's a manageable number.
Yes.
The second, and this is a bit rude, even Jesus Christ couldn't manage 12. One of his members betrayed him.
Yes. Okay.
But a third reason, and a more practical reason, is that part of what I use strongly is a thing called the business canvas of Alex Osterwalder.
Okay.
And Osterwalder business canvas, and you can see plenty of stuff on the internet. He identifies 9 fundamental principles or areas of building a great business.
Okay.
The one he leaves out, which I think is quite staggering, is purpose. Because, he assumes that the purpose of all business is money making, and I don't think it ever has been narrowly, and it's certainly not going to be in the future.
Yes.
So I add purpose to his 9.
Interesting.
And then say we should create peer cohorts where at least one member has expertise in one of those areas. And then we've got a fantastic team to innovate
I like it. So one person controls each component of the business canvas
What
model.
adds value,
Yeah.
not control,
Or
adds
add
value.
value. Yeah, get it. So someone's driving purpose.
Someone's driving new product development.
Yes.
Someone's driving the business model. Someone is driving distribution, etc.
Understand. Okay. And I think, yeah, working collaboratively, if you have someone driving each facet of every component of a business, not even looking at what the nine um, canvases are, if you just look at sales, marketing, collaboration, partnerships, you can, if you get one person driving each of those, it will catapult the scalability of that business pretty quickly.
Yes, and see if their ego is allowed to operate in adding value there,
Yes.
and if you create a structure where people only get equity in the new joint venture by actually adding value,
Oh,
you
then you go back
change.
to your value
Yes,
calculator. Yeah, I understand. Okay.
you start to change the whole fundamental dimensions on which we worked in business before.
I like it. I like it. And that brings it all together and how we can actually operate and collaborate too. If
Exactly.
yeah, no, very interesting.
And be self-interested and be joint interested,
Yes.
commit to the whole community at the same time, get value for ourselves.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that brings it all together for me, the understanding of how you're managing the value and then collaborating to build value
Yeah.
within a business
I
instead
mean,
of
so
monetary.
one
Yeah.
thing, for example, I'm doing with the creation of new industries. What I'm doing
Yes.
is setting up boards, just like I've said, with the 10 different skill sets.
Yes.
And instead of people getting paid to become a board member, they pay to become a board member, which becomes the seed capital of the joint venture
Yes.
to start adding value. And then each meeting, each member has a nominal 10% equity. And each meeting, we vote using high views,
Okay.
high intrinsic value units, to see how much of your high views will be translated to equity because you've added this value, you've performed, you've moved the joint venture onto something really tangible and worthwhile.
Yeah, brilliant way of thinking and a different way to frame it. We generally can walk into partnerships and just slice and dice the equity up front, but then I've been involved in partnerships where the value delivered across all the partners is not necessarily equal. So,
See,
yeah.
I reverse the logic.
Yes.
You only get equity
Mm-hmm.
if you add value,
Yes.
and only get equity or keep your equity if you keep paying your $10,000 to be in the seat each year in seed capital, and if you keep adding value.
That's very easy for people to comprehend and understand that. And if you've got a great measure of value, then that is a very different way of thinking, and reversing it is very clever. Yeah,
Yes.
I like that. I'll
And
explore that.
we're going to have to
Yeah.
reverse, like
Yes.
I said before, the notion of, the steamship's been heading from here to China
Yes.
and, taking our raw materials and then it's coming back. So with students who then take our intellectual property and take it back,
Yes.
and the manufactured goods that, they've turned out from our raw materials, bringing them back. That ship's going to reverse.
And I think it needs to. Let's put it out there. It does have to, and
It has to.
yeah,
Yes.
that's not good. We can't. It's not sustainable. Clearly, the direction we're headed in, and clear change needs to happen.
You touched on and said about the 40 tsunamis that I've been raving on about for the last 2 years.
Yes.
I repeat, I did not forecast the pandemic. I did forecast that there would be a major event that would trigger off the other 40 tsunamis, like the decline of assets, like people needing to cooperate together, enforced, and so on. I used the 40 not as a precise number, but in all of the major cultures, that is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and many Middle Eastern cultures, 40 is a symbolic number of a hell of a lot. So, Moses spent 40 years.
It was 40 years, yeah. And then we've got Lent is 40 days, I believe.
Is that, I don't know about that.
I think
it is.
So, yeah.
Christ was said to spend 40 days in the desert being tempted by the devil. Moses spent 40 days on the mountain getting the 10 Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
He actually got 15, and when he came back and saw them all cavorting around the idols, he smashed one in anger. So 40 is a symbolic number rather in major cultures, a hell of a lot. Not a precise
not
number.
a precise number, just a number that from an impactful number that you've picked. I get
an
that.
Impactful number.
Yes, understand. So yeah, obviously, Neville, purpose is a big thing for you, and from us, the purpose of the DevReady podcast is really to help non-techs build better tech. But it's really a little bit more than that. We really understand, and through business, that it's never really about the technology. It's about the business model. It's about the focus and about who we're actually helping within a business. I think there's some synergy in terms of your thinking and the way we actually think and have delivered this particular podcast in anything. So in your life, how do you perceive purpose? Now, I've read a little bit about your 7 mountains of purpose and what that could mean, and I was quite intrigued. I'd love you to explain that and what that means to you and how you came about putting that together.
Okay. That's a really big, but it's a beautiful topic, so I'm just trying to get my thoughts around it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Basically, to start with, our mind is organized to be purpose-seeking or meaningful making. And it's constantly grabbing stuff and throwing stuff away and molding stuff together that brings meaning, or if you like, brings purpose to what we're experiencing and doing and feeling. Now, if we take that further, of course, there are various philosophies that say, there is no purpose, life is without meaning, and so on. I fundamentally believe that maybe life does have meaning and maybe it doesn't, but I think there's 2 areas that we all have meaning and purpose, which I'll touch on.
Okay.
But purpose is not a terra australis incognito where we need to send a ship out into the world to try and find it, because our own particular purpose, like finding Australia, doesn't exist out there as such. We have to create it, right?
So you believe we're not looking for something, we just need to stand in purpose that we create.
Exactly, except for 2 areas. So I say, and there's an article I've written on LinkedIn about this, or 2, in fact, why we need a sense of purpose and how to find it out. So you can get those access then through my Neville Christie LinkedIn site.
And I'll share all that content at the end of this podcast, definitely.
I'll say that again, sorry.
I'll share all that content definitely out to the community once we roll out the podcast.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Not a problem.
So Dr. Peter Pronto develops a analogy of going to a spiritual journey out of the jungle, and he's surrounded by 7 mountains, and they're all equal size. And the first mountain over there is the procreation and family mountain, and it's like as an animal, we are all designed to have sex, to procreate, to have a family. Like that's sort of, if you like, a fundamental intrinsic purpose of most mammals, whether we like it or not.
Yes.
And of course, that purpose will manifest in all sorts of ways. The second mountain is typically a mountain that we acquire through our DNA or our parents, and some people believe we have a God gene. Now, whatever way we settle down into a spiritual mountain, a spirit mountain, if you like, fundamental, I think, to living a life is to have some spiritual, humanistic, God-centered, God-absent journey, mountain of spirit, and that I believe those 2 are intrinsic.
So connection to divine, basically, some form of connection to something you believe is what God is, spirit is, etc.
Yeah, and you can take God totally out of the equation.
You can, yeah, exactly. If it doesn't relate.
You can inherit it from the mountaintops or that big great space up there, wherever we were taught it used to be, into ourselves, entirely into namaste.
Okay.
Now, apart from that, there are 5 other equal mountains, and these are all the mountains that we create for ourselves. And typically that mountain that we sit on top of changes roughly every 7 years as we go through personal developmental cycles.
Yes.
Again, 7 is in inverted commas rather than a precise number. So the first one is what Abraham Maslow talked about. He called it self-actualization, or becoming the best you can be mountain. So a fundamental inbuilt purpose of all of it is to strive to be better. Like we were born with a whole range of potentials and talents and possibilities, but we were completely unfinished. In fact, for first 15, 20, 24 months or more of our life, we cannot possibly survive alone. It's just not possible.
Even longer, I would say. Even longer, I would say. Yes.
So the next mountain of purpose that we create for ourselves is to be the best human being I can. So, as Maslow said, what a human can be, he or she must be.
Must be. Yeah, I like that statement. Brilliant.
I do too.
Yeah.
The second mountain is what I call the change the world mountain. Like, to leave a legacy, to leave something behind, to make the world better for who we are, for when we came. And that mountain tends to come for most of us a bit later in life, that purpose. But the millennials actually seem to have incorporated that a lot earlier in their life. And
there's been a shift there, hasn't there? In terms of there's been a big shift into millennials in taking a focus on impact and change, which is a great thing for society. I think if we look at that and just attune ourselves to where the millennials are coming from, that's a good thing for long term.
I love it. Yeah. Like what's her name, Greta? Greta Thunberg, the young lady taking the world. We'll vote you out if you don't get stuck into climate change. The next purpose is love. Now, unfortunately, in our language, English, love covers all sorts of different modes. It covers sexual love. It covers love of a parent for their child. It covers love you have for your spouse or your partner. It covers love you have of reading or learning or study, or it covers love of your job. Like, so love is a comprehensive word, but
it is.
The next mountain is really the love mountain, that we see that our fundamental purpose in life is to love and be loved at multiple levels.
Yes. And I think it's innate in us to be loved and project love if we're coming from a higher place, definitely.
Yes. I think all of these 5 mountains are innate, but they don't manifest unless we choose to manifest them.
Choice. Yeah. We have freedom of choice, don't we?
Yes. I don't think we have freedom of choice so much about the first 2, but we certainly do about the other 5. And the next one is the power, wealth, fame. I'm the best in the world. I want Olympic medals. That sort of, drive to excel, drive to be the best, drive to have the most amount of money, to have the most cars, the biggest house. That has been a very, very important mountain for many people, and I think that will change. The 7th mountain is because I can't think of any others.
You've covered quite a bit there. Yes, you've covered quite a bit there in terms of every possibility.
But like human beings are so diverse, I'm sure there are people who are working on other mountains now, and I just don't know about them. What is really important, though, is that at any point in time, right through our lives, these 7 mountains are all important. They're all of equal value. But at any point in time, physically and emotionally and spiritually, we can only climb one mountain at a time.
I like that analogy. Yes, I like it. I like the way you frame that, because as being a mountain, yes, you can't climb 7 at once.
You can't. However, because the mountains have all equal size and equal height and value, once we climb at any point in time a particular mountain and say, this is my main purpose now, like to change the world for the better, one tribe, one idea,
Yes.
one nation, one joint venture, one technology at a time. Once we make that decision, we embrace all of the other mountains as well. That involves us in loving. It involves us in becoming the best person we can be. It involves us having serious family relationships and building it. It involves us in a spiritual purpose as well.
Yes.
Okay, so
No,
one
quite
mountain
powerful.
embraces the others, but one mountain is prime of the mountains for a period.
It's a very interesting, and this is Peter Pronto, Dr. Peter Pronto, alter ego, that's projected this out there.
I'm just thinking the ideas from Dr. Peter Pronto, yes.
I love it. Now, just bring us back to business. One of your sayings is a great business flows from a great life purpose of its founder. Now, from a founding perspective, obviously which mountain you sit on as a founder of a business is going to significantly change the direction and course of that business. If you're just sitting looking for power, wealth, and fame, it's going to be a very money-driven business.
Yeah.
If you're looking to change the world, it's going to be a very impactful business. If you're looking to be the best you, that mountain, that is going to be all about learning, growing, evolving, innovating. There's no right answer here, but I think just looking at it from that context and understanding clearly the founder drives the business and purpose is massively important.
But say for example, you're Italian or you're the mafia or whatever, and your purpose is, your prime purpose is family.
Okay.
So what that means is that you seek to build a dynasty. You seek to not only become president of the United States, but to have your family and your kids, all in positions of power and to be left a huge amount of money, for their children and the grandchildren, even to the seventh generation, to be looked after. Right. So you're absolutely right. The prime purpose of the founder of a business does ripple through into the business he or she selects and builds, and relationships and what manifests for good or bad in the world.
Yeah, and that's I think it's a great way to people reflect in this current time and just get an understanding of where they sit and what mountain they're on. And I've done this myself, and it's very interesting just to reflect as how you shift too, because I think as in times in life you change which mountain you might be sitting on. And, one question I do have is...
Can I suggest to that? I would want to put this absolutely bluntly.
Yes.
Right now, as we are ensconced at home, away from the world, this is the time that we must rework our chief mountain of purpose.
Yeah, and I think it is the perfect time for everybody to reflect. Definitely. Yep. So one question I do have is... So success can be defined by many things. It can mean many things to many people, but
depends what mountain you sit on.
Exactly, and I think that's really good in that context. But do you think, from some stepping back, do you think a great life's purpose is the only way really to be successful in terms of your definition of it? Do you think that purpose allows us to drive forward as a human if we're working towards something, rather than just accepting what life throws at us?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Look, if we don't care which country we're heading to, and we don't care which luxury cruiser we get onto, we just just climb on board and let us take us there. Then what happens? We get the coronavirus.
Yes.
That luxury ship, turns from being a wonderful experience into being a death bomb. And I think that's analogous too to life. Like, people who drift, who don't have a defined purpose, it's sort of like they're scattered. They're not focused. Life is that in many ways they become a victim of what life returns them. And life is difficult. Buddha says, life is difficult. Once you accept that, it becomes less difficult.
A lot easier. Yes.
And by having a purpose, it's like we get the train tracks to to go down. And of course, we keep changing them. We can get on another line, go in another direction. We can change from a train to a boat or to an aeroplane if it's not grounded at the moment. So,
yes.
And like purpose, I'm 78, and yet I in many ways, I believe I've been serving my apprenticeship. And right now, over the last 2 years, I prepared myself in multiple ways for this virus, even though I didn't predict it would come as such.
Yes.
And so I now have this absolutely certainty that I'm the right person at the right time to be doing the right thing. And that's a wonderful, amazing feeling of confidence.
Yeah, and standing in certainty, there's no better power than that.
Exactly.
And in uncertain times, if you can stand in certainty,
for you,
Yeah, exactly.
The last thing I want to say is what worked for me would work for you or work for anybody else. But I
Agree.
know what works for me. I know what my purpose is. I am very clear on that. And at 78, it's a wonderful thing. I'm not heading to the pearly gates. I have a goal set to have my last orgasm at 103 and then depart.
Love it. So plenty to go on between now and then.
Absolutely. 103 to 123 when I get there. So.
Yeah, and just sitting here in this conversation is just amazing just to see. I think be the best you lives in this conversation from you to me. But I'm curious, the mountain that you're currently sitting on, we haven't defined what that is for you yet. Is it in the number 7? Changing the world. That's where you're sitting.
Changing the world for the better, collaboratively and working with SMEs.
Brilliant. And I appreciate just putting that out there and just so everyone's clear as where you're coming from. And it's sort of, I see the collaborative component is all about that connection as well. So there's a lot of connection within that. There's a lot of that love connection too, because when we are connected, we potentially can be in a love state as well. So brilliant.
That's you've got it. Like as part of that, I'm increasing my capacity to love, and I'm accepting more love than I've ever had before. I'm accelerating at a huge speed my mastery. Like, for example, I've suddenly in these last 2 weeks become far more technologically proficient than
I love it.
that I have in my whole life. I do have a sense of spirit in my life, not God as traditionally defined, but certainly spirit. So, family is important to me, but the extended family, not just my, biological family. So yes.
Let's just take a bit more of a pinpoint approach on this. Now, I'm in the community. I can see opportunity. Where you have an idea, you have a concept, but we're living in interesting times. What do you recommend to anybody out there that's got this idea, got this big problem they want to solve? Where do they start if they've never been on a journey or an entrepreneurial journey before? What do you believe is the starting point of any new venture?
All right. Number one, get absolutely clear your purpose. Why do you want to do this? What value are you seeking to add to the world, to your community and yourself? That's number one. Number two, then reach out either to a very competent mentor or, as I've sort of been suggesting, reach out to 9 other cohorts, people in SMEs, each who have, and you need to go and have a look at the business canvas for this, the Alex Osterwalder business canvas. So go through that and start selecting people to be a cohort for you. And if you can't find them, ask for help. Go online, go to Google, go to LinkedIn.
LinkedIn's a beautiful place to meet people and collaborate. So yes, definitely recommend LinkedIn.
So form your cohort, and then, and this is a bit of special pleading, I think, go to fasttrackassets.com.au and look at the 2 blue blocks about the $100 million challenge. And it's not a $100 million challenge, it's a 100 million high view challenge. How do you collaboratively do 2 things? First of all, build or protect or change your current business if you have one because it's now obsolete, or create a foundation business that will give you the income and the stability for your family that you need. And you do that collaboratively.
Okay.
Then you move on to collaborative innovation as a group. So you are creating new industries, new ideas, new enterprises on a shared equity basis. So that's what I recommend. I do not recommend going the solo entrepreneurial route at this time. I did that 44 times. I built 41 businesses. I lost nearly all the money with the other three.
That's the learning. What learning did you gather out of those three? What was the difference there?
That money is transitory.
I like it.
I know how to create it and make it and add value. I don't know how to hang on to it very well.
So then I would perceive that money is not your number one driver, clearly.
Well, God, it's only a medium extent. Yes. You know, money doesn't buy happiness. It just buys a better class of misery, really.
I like it.
Although Ellie Macpherson says, whoever says money doesn't buy happiness doesn't know where to shop.
Doesn't know where to shop. Yeah, that's a very materialistic life as well. So if that's what's driving you, and I think if you're possibly sitting on that mountain of power, wealth and fame, then it'll make you happy, clearly.
I have to say, I sincerely believe in the next decade, in this decade, those people who are still just living a materialistic world, 99% of them will not do well, and 1% of them will do extraordinarily, fabulously, unbelievably well, beyond any riches anyone has ever thought of.
Interesting. Why 1%?
Because roughly 1% of the families and corporations and nations of the world combined own already. And as I said, I don't actually know the real figure.
You're saying about 80+%. Yep.
Well, let's say 70%. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
a lot. Let's say a lot.
They will end up owning far more of a far bigger cake in the future.
Okay. So where does that leave the rest of us?
Needing to collaborate, to innovate, to future-proof our business, to change the world for the better. And changing the world for the better includes incorporating all the 7 mountains, not just one.
Love it. Neville, it's been a pleasure.
Yes,
really appreciate getting insight into your thinking, your mindset moving forward. And at 78, you talk like a 20-year-old just starting his first venture now. So it's just brilliant to see
19.
the mindset. 19, sorry, I gave you one extra year. I do apologise on that.
I was 18 for about 20 years, and then I grew up a year, so...
Yes. Brilliant. Well, Neville, really appreciate you joining us today. And everyone, I'll share out Neville's details on LinkedIn. So Neville Christie is his LinkedIn or his name, and they find it on LinkedIn. And fasttrackassets.com.au, or is it just .com?
No, .com.au. Yes.
.com.au. You'll learn about more about Neville's thinking in terms of where we might be headed over the next 5-10 years, maybe even shorter term. Who knows? But really enjoyed this conversation, and a lot of great content to share. And we'll publicise this out pretty quickly. So thank you, Neville.
Thank you. I've enjoyed our dialogue. Thank you, Andrew.